I'm Takeshi, and you're watching Kojima Racing. Alright, so I have to apologize for not making a video for a couple of weeks, but I've been busy cleaning out my garage to make room for the Shelby before the snow flies. This video will be about some things that I neglected to address during the initial walk around on the Shelby, and also about track apps. So we're going to go over the track apps on the car and launching it, launch control on a Shelby. So without further ado, let's get started. So anyhow, first thing, the brakes on the Shelby, when I did the initial walk around, I believe I said that it had 15-inch front rotors with six piston calipers on it, which they are in fact 6 piston calipers, but the front rotors are 16.5-inch. It's the Performance Pack 1 rotors that are 15-inch rotors on my 2018 Mustang GT with the Performance Pack. So this is a larger wheel and much larger caliper, but they're both 6 piston calipers in the front, between the Shelby and the GT Performance Pack cars. The back brakes on this, the rotors are 14.6 inches. So they're just as nearly as large as the front rotors on the Performance Pack 1 car. And then the calipers, I believe I said they were 2 piston. They're actually 4 piston calipers on these. The other spec that I actually got wrong was the rear gear ratio, which is I said it was a 355. It's actually a 373 on the Shelby cars. It's the Performance Pack 1 cars that have the 355 gearing with the 10-speed transmission. So this one, of course, is a 7-speed dual clutch transmission. And then the other thing is, I neglected to mention that this car has the MagneRide. I talked about it when I was doing the walk around on the GT Performance Pack car, because that one does not have MagneRide. So I was talking about the fact that the Shelby is equipped with it. But yes, this car has the MagneRide. All Shelby GT500s have MagneRide on them, and it's specifically tuned, I believe, for whether you have the carbon fiber track pack or otherwise, and might even be specifically tuned if you have the carbon fiber handling package, which is just the wheels, the painted carbon fiber wheels, not the exposed carbon fiber wheels. But regardless, this car has the forged aluminum alloy wheels. So that's pretty much it as far as that's concerned. The stuff that I missed on the initial walk around. So we'll get into the track apps and see what that's all about, and kind of go from there. And then we're going to launch the car several times, because I see a lot of the media, other YouTube channels, like Motor Trend Television and Throttle House and a number of others. Edmunds is a particular offender when it comes to describing the launch control on these cars and how well they launch. They all seem to think that you can't launch these cars unless you put special tires on them, which is absolutely not true. But we'll get into more of that as the video goes on. Okay, we're in the Shelby now, and let's go ahead and get started, and we'll talk about the track apps and You'll be able to hear the different exhaust tones with the valved exhaust system, and we'll launch it and do some different things with the launch control and the line lock. And so you can see how all this stuff works and get an impression of how well it works, and basically debunk the myth that you can't launch a Shelby on street tires on an unprepped surface. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put the car in sport mode. So you can see there it changes the dash display automatically. This is my favorite configuration. I'm going to put the exhaust in track mode, which then it comes up, says specifically that you're only supposed to use that off-road. And we'll go ahead and do that with the window down so we can hear the exhaust. So I'm just gonna give it a few revs with the track mode exhaust, and so you can hear it. And we'll do this for all the different modes. So starting with track mode right here. Here we go. Pretty loud. Okay. Quiet mode, which I wanted to do it like this because it's quite a bit of a contrast. So here's quiet mode. To normal mode. Sport mode. More distinctly hear that around the back of the car, the difference between the different modes on it. So we'll just go through. These are these toggle switches here. So you've got the mode for puts the car in the different driving modes, and then the exhaust, and then of course your traction control device, and then hazard lights, push button start. So we'll go through the different modes. Like I said, I prefer the sport mode because I like the way the tachometer wraps around the top of the display over to the speedometer. But if you're in track mode, it's predominantly focuses on the tachometer, and then your speedometer is just the numerical part on the side there. You can see that it turns the traction control off for track mode, and it puts the suspension in a very tense feel, and it puts the steering in a sport feel to the steering input. So moving on, you've got drag strip mode, which is also like track mode. It's supposed to be for track only, off-road use only. It's pretty similar to the track mode as far as what's displayed on here, but the difference is between the track mode and the drag strip mode is it actually will turn off the traction control in track mode, while it does not turn off the traction control in drag strip mode. And we'll get more into that a little bit later. And that's one of the biggest misconceptions about launch control and drag strip mode, is that you need to have the traction control off for drag strip mode, which is not true. We'll get into that a little bit in a few moments here. So moving on to the modes, there's the slippery mode, which of course is rain or snow or ice, which I don't recommend actually driving the car in those conditions. You know, like I said before, the car will likely be garaged, but it puts it in the regular gauge mode, where you have the regular tachometer on one side and the speedometer on the other. Then there's normal mode, which is, like I said, the same, but it doesn't configure the traction control and stability control for really slippery conditions, and also the shift profile, so that it's not as likely to spin the tires. It does still have traction control on and stability control on for the normal mode though as well, and the car will let you break the tires loose a little bit with those settings, unlike the track mode. So sport mode, back to sport mode, and then, like I said, the instrument display is configurable, so you can basically set your gauges in the center here, this section here, which I prefer to have a boost vacuum gauge and a air fuel ratio gauge, and so that's my configuration. I also like the sport mode because it allows you to use launch control just like the drag strip mode, which you cannot use launch control in any other mode. Most of the other automotive sites on YouTube, for example, like Edmunds or Motor Trend, that sort of thing, they all launch the cars in track mode, which turns off the traction control, and then they complain about not having traction. And so it's the most ridiculous thing ever, because this car is designed to work with the traction control, with the launch control. And so, like I said, we'll get into that a little bit more when we're actually launching the car. So for starters, we're going to show you how the line lock works. And so that's for heating up your tires, especially when you're going to launch it. So, you know, some people just like to do burnouts for, you know, doing burnouts, but it was intended to heat the tires for launching the car. And that's another thing that a lot of the reviewers have not done, is heated up the tires before they've launched the Shelby, which these tires do feature really good straight line performance even without heating up the tires, but you know, that's kind of a necessity if you're going to go for the maximum acceleration possible. You want to heat these tires up or put on a specialized tire. There's a lot of debate over whether a car is quote unquote modified if you've changed the tires, which Ford doesn't make tires. You know, the brands of tires are, you know, specific typically for what you intend to do with the car, and switching off the tires as long as they were made to fit on the car, in my opinion, does not constitute a modification to the car. So in other words, the car is still stock if you put, say, a drag radial on it, for example, because you intend to accelerate quickly in a straight line. And then likewise, if you're going to take it to a road course, it would just be stupid to, you know, expect it to perform at its top level on tires that it was equipped with. People don't do that with four-wheel drive trucks or anything else, and so why should it be the case with a you know, a performance car? And so, you know, a street-driven performance car, yes, I mean, you do want to have the most versatility out of the tires that you have on the car, which I believe these Michelin PS4S's that come equipped are quite good all around. Like I said, straight line performance, or you know, tracking the car, or you know, just daily driving. But regardless of that, you're not going to get your top performance numbers out of any of those things with just one tire on the car. And so, but anyways, without further ado, so this here is your track apps button. It's basically the Cobra symbol, and so when you push that, it brings up this. So you've got My Mode, where you can adjust the colors in the dash, because it has Ford My Color and stuff like that. It's got a shift indicator that you can adjust on it, where it turns the bar on the tachometer yellow at a certain point, and then red. And here's where you can put the different gauges into the dash that you want to customize it. But we're talking about track apps. So here's your track apps. Select OK. The first thing that comes up is line lock. So it's actually really easy to put the car into launch control, but it is a little more difficult to select the line lock, because you have to go into this feature, once you've turned the launch control on, it's on all the time as long as you're in a mode that permits it, and you do not turn off your traction control like I had said before. So we'll select line lock. Okay. Okay, so anyways, traction control's off, and you've gone into track apps, and now you hit OK to initialize line lock. Hold it until the wheel symbol applies, and it says to engage, firmly apply brake and hold. It says engaged, press OK to begin. You can feel it come on, and it gives you a certain amount of time. So basically you can push on the accelerator now. I'm not going to go ahead and do it at this moment, but it'll break the tires loose and you can do a burnout. Then it will eventually release on its own, unless you release the brake first. So now it says line lock released, launch control not available. So we're going to go ahead and turn that off. So in order to gauge the line lock, it's a little more difficult, because you have to go into the track apps, and then you also have to have the traction control off before you begin. So but that's how you would heat the tires. You're probably not going to do that if you're you know, just doing a standing start on the street or something like that, especially because these tires will, for the most part, hold on the lower settings on the launch control. So anyways, moving on. Once you have done a burnout and you want to then use your launch control, you basically have to hit the track apps button again, which will take it out of launch control mode, line lock mode, which will kind of it'll configure your dash automatically to make it look like the drag or track mode. But when you come back out of the track apps, then it'll go back into the regular sport mode configuration. But then you see there it's still got traction control off, so we're going to go ahead and turn the traction control back on. So now it's got traction control on. We're going to go into track apps, and we are going to select launch control, make sure it's turned on, and then you can set the RPM. So for the street, on the street tires, 12 to 1400 RPMs is probably reasonable for launch control. You can maybe go up to 1600. Anything above that, you probably need some like VHT or you know, a track that's got a little bit of rubber on it already, or something of that nature, or a specialized tire. So and that's what a lot of these other reviewers of the launch control on this car don't understand, is that basically yeah, the car can overwhelm the tires pretty easily, even in launch control. And so launch control actually utilizes the anti-lock braking and traction control to allow the car to accelerate at the quickest possible pace on the tire that it's equipped with, or with the traction that it has. So in other words, if you change the tires off onto this car to like a drag radial or a drag specific tire, then you can utilize the upper RPM ranges in the launch control. While as with the factory tires, like I said, you'd want to stick to 12 to 1400 RPM. A lot of them have complained about the car hesitating, or launch control hesitating, which is actually not true. It's pretty instantaneous, but what does happen is if you put it at the lowest setting, it's like sidestepping the clutch at 1200 RPM, so the car bogs out before it takes off. And so that's why I recommend maybe 1400 RPMs on the street on an unprepped surface with the factory equipped tires. 1400 RPMs is pretty good, and I'll show you how the car launches with all these different you know, RPM ranges on the factory tires, basically. So, but we're gonna leave it at 1400 RPMs, and so like I said, it does use the traction control, and it's not too intrusive. It will actually allow the tires to spin just a little bit while you're accelerating. So we're going to go ahead and put it in drive mode, and you'll see here on the dash it lights up LC because we are in sport mode. It would do the same thing if you were in drag mode, which basically means that launch control is available. And so it's that easy. Once you've set it up, you don't have to touch it ever again. Just leave it like that. Launch control is on every time you are stopped in drive with your foot on the brake. It will activate it. So I'm going to hold the brake at the moment, and then I'm going to go ahead and depress the accelerator all the way to the floor. That's how it works. So you can hear the rev limiter is cutting it off at 1400 RPMs, and as soon as I release the brake, the car will launch. And so you'll see that when I'm actually doing the launches. So we're just going over the launch control at the moment, but then we'll go ahead and launch it. So moving up the RPMs, here we've got, go back into the track apps, and then we're going to go back to launch control and back to RPM. And so we're going to move it up to where it's out of range for these tires. And which is the maximum, 3,200 RPMs, which now you'll see that the launch control does become intrusive and not allowing the car to accelerate as quickly as it possibly could because you don't have enough traction. And so basically, if you're outside of the parameters of you know, the tires spinning maybe a little bit, then it's just not going to work. And so yes, you can't use launch control on a street tire turned all the way up to maximum because you're just not going to get enough traction to even make it reasonable. And so it's going to use the traction control to basically cut it off, and it's going to become very intrusive. And so we'll demonstrate that right now. So here we go with launch control. So there you have it. That's pretty much everything with the launch control and track apps on the car. Okay, so we're back in my garage now, and got the car squeezed in here. So basically made enough room for the car in the garage, so that's nice. Anyhow, but as you can see in the video, it's pretty clear that the vehicle really has no problem getting significant amounts of traction with the launch control, and that's set at the 1400 RPMs on a completely unprepped surface. And it's not really a very ideal surface either, and then that's on the factory equipped tires. So you can see in the video that there's very little wheel slip, which should produce high 10-second quarter-mile passes, even on an unprepped surface. So the reviewers that reviewed the car, and they always you know, show that it has massive traction loss. It's like I said, it's because they're using it in track mode, which the last daylight pass in the video prior to this was in track mode with traction control off, and even then there was very little wheel slip. And so of course I did just roll into the throttle. I didn't just you know, stab it initially, but even still, I mean, you know, that should still produce maybe a low 11-second pass in the quarter mile. And so you know, I don't know why they have such bad issues with it. Maybe it's because they are not drag racers. I have quite a bit of experience drag racing, or you know, they just don't understand the car or the launch control and how it works with the traction control augmenting the launch control. And so and you can clearly see it in the videos when they're talking about it. They're turning off traction control, and then they say that they have launch control on, which isn't even possible. The car won't let you do that unless the 2020 GT500 was different than the 2021. But as far as I know, the specifications are exactly the same. The only difference is going to be in the packages that are available, like the carbon fiber wheel package, handling package as they call it, with the painted carbon fiber wheels and paint colors and such. So really the specifications, I think, are identical. And so I don't really understand why they have such a problem launching these cars. I think they launch quite well. You can see in the setting, when I had it in the setting, the highest RPM allowable for launch, which was, I believe, 3,200 RPMs, that yes, then the traction control becomes intrusive, and it's actually going to reduce the ET time, because it jumps in and it stops the wheels from spinning and the car pauses for a while. Likewise, launching at the lowest setting, 1,200 RPMs, will cause the car to bog out, because, like I said, it's like sidestepping the clutch in a manual transmission car, almost at idle, and so you don't do that. And so these are my Mickey Thompson ET Street drag tires. They are a bias ply wrinkle wall drag tire, but it has DOT approval, so they are street legal. And that is what I used to run on this when I used to campaign it. I used to drag race this car quite a bit, and so it's a altogether different animal. It's also a manual transmission as opposed to a dual clutch or an automatic. You know, so I have a lot of experience doing that, and you really have to learn to finesse those kind of vehicles. This vehicle, not so much. It's really easy. It's just, you know, put it in drive, launch control, which you've already preset the RPM, and just go. So basically there you have it. So I got some more content coming soon. I will be out autocrossing the vehicle. I'm excited to have it on the track for the first time this weekend, so that will be coming on the channel. Additionally, I still got to do a walk around on my service truck, the F-150, and possibly my son's car, which is the '88 Fox body. It's blue, but we'll get into that more later. So if you're interested in any of this kind of content, or you hope to own one of these cars someday and you want to learn more about them, please like and subscribe to my channel, and stay tuned for more content.